What's up, y'all? Today I'm going to do a tutorial on something that nobody's asked for, and I'm not sure how many people are going to care about, but that is going to be hardstyle kicks. So, this.
Put it in reverse, man!
And so the way that I made this was 3 different ingredients. We have kind of like a little distorted sub, a distorted mid layer, and then just some noise, all running through a distortion bus. So the first thing that I got was my little sub kick layer. So the way that I made this sound was I took oscillator A, picked out a kind of square wavy looking wavetable, which is dull toy. Then on LFO1, I set it to envelope mode, turned BPM sync off so I could kind of tune it to taste. Went into my matrix, used LFO1 as the source, set it to the master tuning, turned it on to unipolar, so it ends up at my initial pitch there, 3 octaves down, which I forgot to mention, and then just set this up to be whatever the pitch drop is going to be for the sound, right? You can just experiment with different stuff. And then once I have this, I can go in and just change my rate and get kind of the tone that I want out of it. So also I have an MG18 on this sound, so that's a low pass 18 filter. 18, that's the sharpness of it is 18 decibels per octave. So I'm just cutting the highs off of it and driving it quite a bit with the drive knob. Then lastly, for the volume envelope, I decayed the attack out a little bit. So it's kind of cutting some of this initial hit off the pitch drop. And then I brought my sustain down. And the reason for that is if you run a sound through heavy distortion, if I take my... you see how it changes in tone, like the top's crispy in a weird way, versus if I just send it sustaining volume, kind of get more of like a uniform pitch. So like weirder distortions tend to sound more interesting to my ear when you have a change in volume on them. So then I send it through an EQ, cut some of that high out, boosted a little bit of the fundamental frequency, and then send it through a distortion. I don't even think I changed anything on that. So that's how I got this sound. So that's the first layer. So the second sound here is a little bit easier. And the way that I got it was I went in, found an 808. Pick whichever one you think would work well. Just kind of experiment. There's not like a cut and dry, this is the best one to use in my opinion. It's best to experiment because that's how you get new sounds. So I took this 808, pitched it down 4 semitones using the pitch knob here to match it to the D. So this one was in F sharp, I believe, right? Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4 goes down to D. So now this and this are the same pitch. Then I took it, sent it through, one of the things that I'll say with hardstyle kicks that I found is really useful is, and I'll come back to this later when I'm showing the master bus distortion or the mix bus distortion, is put your distortion before you do your EQing. That way, just do random heavy distortion here. Here I have a flat hat and a bit jam, and I've turned the preamp up on both of these and the asymmetry just a little bit to the left, which introduces a bit of stereo. Right, if I turn these both off, it's mono. I wanted some weird stereo, so I turned the asymmetry to the left. To the right is also a weird stereo effect, but it's just... I don't know how it's different. It's like vertical asymmetry versus this seems to be stereo asymmetry. I don't know if that's correct. That's just what it sounds like to me. I know this way, no stereo this way. Should be adding stereo. I don't know why that's not. Why is that not? Is it the oversampling? Is it the center? Well, my life is a lie. Everything I said is untrue. Whatever. It's to the left. Do it to the left. Yeah, I'm just gonna move on. We're gonna act like that didn't happen. So then now that the distortion's on it already, I can go in and change my initial EQ. So this is my pre-distortion EQ here. And what I'm going to do to it is boost some frequencies, starting with a middle frequency. So As you can see, that's adding almost like the little hardstyle thing. And then once we add a low cut that's not completely killing the lows, but can you hear how that's kind of starting to add that like weird hardstyle crunch bass sound? I don't really know what you'd call that. Then once that's happening, I can go in here and shorten it, which as you can see, that's what I did with my final sound. So I did single curve instead of dual curve here. Did this. Then we get that type of sound. Then I'm cutting some of the low end off. Right, that's a lot more mid-heavy. Now we're getting that hardstyle crunch sound, and then I'm going to boost the high. Just because there's not that much high end in this signal anyways. Right, that's the input into the distortion. That's what's going into the distortion. Alright, so then I'm going to add another EQ after to cut the lows out. And I actually like that better than my original result, but we're going to stick with what I have here. And then lastly, we have a noise layer that I'll show the post effects on in a second. But it just sounds like that. So this is probably quite a long sample originally. I have my little noise library here. And I had a question before on how to get noise. I'll do like a really short tutorial later on how to make noise, like digital noise and recorded noise. But I don't want to inflate the length of this one because I think that's really hurting some of the videos by having too long of a run length. So I'll do a separate tutorial on that later, but just know if all things else fail, you can always just use the noise in any of the synths that have a noise oscillator to make this layer. All I did here was just take this noise and turn it into a little stab shape. And with these envelopes here, I did some finicking with these, like changing the strength and the curve and all that. And that's kind of how you shape the sound, for me at least, after I put the post effects on it. So now we have our three main layers here. So let's talk about the post processing on these. Firstly, the noise. It's really simple. I just have a chorus because this was a mono bit of noise and I wanted that to be the width on the high end. So chorus and then a EQ to cut the highs out. So that ends us with that. The next piece here is my little donkey mid synth, and all I added to this was a compressor to really kill the volume. So as you can see, we're going from, I wanted to get the transient really short, so I added this compressor, which just kills that transient, as you can see there. So then I have a stereo enhancer here that this automation is controlling. That's just bringing the stereo down on this sound after the attack happens. Then next I send it through another distortion, which is like a really heavy distortion that I turned the mix down on. As you can see, I turned the preamp way up, the threshold I left where it started. And then lastly, EQ'd some of those low mids out that are going to interfere with my sub. So then the sub, as you can see, I just drew a little, did the fade in with this to make it attack after the mid bass layer hit. So, and then I went and cut the high end completely off this. So it's just the fundamental really that's kind of swooping down in here. Right? So now let's talk about something that I mentioned earlier, which is start with your distortion. So this is the sound without the distortion. Hear how much different that is from this. Right? This is glued together. This is tight. This is distorted. This is kind of interesting and like finally processed, where this is three different sounds completely separate from each other. Not completely separate, but they don't sound pushed together. And the way that, I think that distortion helps with this is, or the best way to do distortion for this is start out by just getting a distortion. So I'm using Fruity Wave Shaper here. I've set a single curve 2, turn this up quite a bit. And this, I would start and do this first. So I'm sending these three sounds into a heavy distortion. This is with no post effects here. Now this is almost 3 completely separate sounds. So as you can hear, like it's doing the majority of the work in this post processing thing. So then the only things that I did to, glue this more together, like give it more of a cohesive tone, is an OTT, right? So it sounds like it's bringing the mid and high bands up. As you can see, it's dragging them slowly up there. As you can see, these, like the yellow lines here means that it's trying to push the highs up still. Whereas the, if I turn it off, listen to how quickly the highs in the mid range, like just with your ears, don't even look at this, but like listen. They fall really fast. High end falls really fast. High end drags out a while. Right? I hope that's kind of illustrating that. Then when I turn the sound goodizer on, pushes it even harder. And then when I turn this Pro Q3 on, just gives a little bit more weight to my mid layer. So just kind of bringing them all three together. So hopefully that gives you a good idea of how you can make one of these sounds. And just as a side note to finish this one off, you can do this same process with different 808s. So like, let's say I was gonna do, this is my sub layer that's in E, F sharp. I got to pitch down 2 semitones, right? 1, 2, yep. So we'll call this my mid layer. This is my high layer. I'm going to get more of a pitch drop, so we'll go 5 to 0. This is basically just mirroring the same thing that I did. We'll copy and use the same noise, except just changing the source here. And then with this, I'm doing my pitch drop, so use 50% as the default value. You can kind of just, again, quickly make different versions of this sound, and I'm going to legit just send this through the exact same processing. So we'll go 11 for this one, 12 for this one, so 11, 12, hopefully this works, and this one should be routed already. And it's not the best. So then after making some adjustments to the fades here, I went in and just changed the EQ on this, added another distortion after it on the sub here. A little bit of bias on that. Change the noise EQ. Change this mid band. Actually, I don't think I even changed that at all. That's just the same effects. And then just a little different shape on the wave shaper. Getting me and adding a final post compressor. Getting me another quick hard bass. So that's kind of the process for making these. So thank you for watching. I have been releasing new Dariacore on the Rip Dance Club side project. I'm going to do a separate tutorial on how to make your own noise or get recorded noise. But yeah, that's going to do it for this one, y'all. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.